This is going to be the social media, how it's changed the gaming industry and the modern RPG player. Over here we have Owen Casey Stevens of Super Genius Games.
Hi, folks.
And Mark Jadok of Purple Duck Games.
Hello.
And is it Jadok?
Gedek.
Gedek.
Okay.
My apologies.
That's okay.
I knew I did not know how to pronounce that. So.
Yeah.
It seems to be a common problem.
My inclination is Gedak, and that just didn't sound like a name, so Gedek. Okay. I Gedek.
And if I could have you two just give a short little introduction about yourselves to the audience that will be streaming in shortly.
Okay. My name is Owen Casey Stevens. I'm a professional full-time role-playing game writer and developer and a little bit producer. I started gaming in the early 1980s with the first couple editions of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. I eventually started getting magazines, articles published through Dragon and Dungeon Magazine. Worked full-time for Wizards of the Coast from 2000 to 2001, and then became a freelance writer after that during the D20 boom when the third edition of D20 was big. And eventually, in part because of social media, and I'm sure I'll talk about that more later, ended up working with Super Genius Games, got brought on as a developer for Super Genius Games. I mostly do work with material that connects to the Pathfinder role-playing game, although in my career I've worked on Wheel of Time and Call of Cthulhu and Gamma World and a broad range of games, so I've got a fair amount of experience with different intellectual properties. And I was one of the writers of the Star Wars Saga system, which was the last D20 Star Wars game.
I'm Mark Gedek. I got into role-playing games back in the 80s with Dungeons & Dragons. I didn't get really involved in the industry at all until the OGL, and I got involved mostly through playtesting, and I did a lot of playtesting with Ronald's Publishing, and that sometimes got used and sometimes didn't. And I worked a bunch with Phil Reed with Ronin Arts for a number of years. And when Pathfinder came out, I worked on updating a bunch of the monsters that never got updated. And we released Forgotten Foes through Tricky Owlbear Publishing, Brett Boyd, who I knew from Ronin Arts. And then after that, me and Steven, who wrote Forgotten Foes, started Purple Duck Games, and I've been running that ever since. I am not a full-time game designer or writer. I am a full-time high school chemistry and physics teacher, or chemistry and math teacher. And I do all the writing and publishing in those spare moments between everything else.
Excellent. And as your moderator, I'm Eric Evian. I also provide ConCom for the Great Falls Gaming Rendezvous. I also provide services as ConCom for AetherCon Online RPG Convention. Also in town, I'm the president of the Sandbaggers Game Club, which provides gaming near non-stop. So people who like gaming and want more than just 3 days, we also provide gaming for all those people in town. Also, I'm a self-publisher, and our little outfit's named Igray Publishing, and we're looking to start up within the next year and start fully going. And that brings us to the main topic at hand, is the topic of social media. Social media such as Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and a number of other websites that do provide services to network not only individuals and people, but also businesses, companies, and all other such things have affected how business is done fundamentally since even past like 1990. Once the advent of the internet hit, it's literally changed the game in all industries, and the RPG industry itself is no different. And I'm aware that Super Genius and Purple Duck Games deal well, not exclusively, but do extensively deal with online sales through PDFs and other such media. First topic and first question is, what are your personal feelings on dealing with, say, sites like RPG Now or Drive-Thru RPG, other sales vendors online that compete with direct brick-and-mortar stores?
You want to open with that?
Well, I don't have a lot of product in brick-and-mortar stores as Purple Duck Games. When in January of last year, I acquired Robert Thompson's company, Four Winds Fantasy Gaming. So now, through Four Winds Fantasy Gaming and their relationship with Studio 2 Publishing, I have some product in brick-and-mortar stores, but I haven't necessarily I don't know if I haven't taken advantage of that as well as I should have, or if I don't quite understand that market. and that's probably a bit of growing for me. I have a lot of my stuff at RPG Now or OBS. I have stuff up at Paizo. I have stuff up at the D20 Pathfinder SRD. For me, out of those three venues, my RPG Now sales are better than the other two sales sites. But it seems to be very dependent on publishers. I know, like Dreamscar Press was saying that their stuff up at D20 Pathfinder SRD outsells them everywhere else. And
which is absolutely not the results I get.
Yeah, and that's not the results I get. I get actually since the acquiring of Four Winds Fantasy Gaming, my Paizo sales have been increasing. And so Robert had cultivated quite a loyal fan base, and he was known at Paizo, and Purple Duck Games wasn't that known at Paizo, and now I'm getting some spillover sales. So it used to be that for every $4 I made at RPG Now, I made $1 at Paizo, and now it's 2 to 1. So it's coming along. Out of all the sites, I like the tools that RPG Now gives me. More than anything else.
Yeah.
Because both Drive-Thru, Pathfinder SRD, and Paizo don't have good tools for publishers.
Well, Drive-Thru does, it's the same thing.
Oh, sorry. I mean,
You mean
D20
GFGR.com
yeah.
store and Paizo don't have good publisher tools.
No, they don't. And so that makes it hard to. You can find more data on what your customers are doing at RPG Now, and you can do better target stuff for them because of it. And it'd be nice to have some of those tools elsewhere, but they just either it's not a priority or they don't have an interest. It's hard to say. Those aren't discussions that are.
Well, there are some.
There's some, but
so
you have to be in the right circles on those ones.
I guess maybe so. So Paizo mostly makes their money making and selling their own games, mostly in print. They happen to have an online store that does print, and they decided at one point to use their consignment system to allow you to sell PDFs. So the same system that is designed for you to drop off 5 physical products and say, if you sell these, pay me, is the system that they bolted on PDF controls for. And as a result, it is not designed, I don't get to upload the product and decide when it'll go live, and that's all things where I give it to them and they have to get around to doing it. They're very good about that, but at the One Bookshelf sites that Drive-Thru RPG and RPG Now, I could right now upload something and have it go live Christmas of 2015 if I wanted to. And I could have it have a sale and the price change every day and track who came in and where they came in from and send out emails about it. The publisher controls at Drive-Thru are much better. But Drive-Thru is primarily makes its money by selling things through their online stores. So it's in their best interest to give us all the tools we can because that's their primary income stream. The D20pfsrd.com store is relatively new. I mean, it's less than a year old, isn't it? Or about a year old. So they're adding stuff as fast as they can, but they are now competing with Paizo, which is the primary vendor of PDFs for Pathfinder, and Drive-Thru RPG/RPG Now, which I will just call One Bookshelf from here on out, or OBS, who are sort of the granddaddy of the system. They were there when Phil Reed and Monty Cook first started doing this, and so they're where most people shop. Do you mostly link to RPG Now or Drive-Thru RPG?
I link probably equally to those two.
Okay.
And Drive-Thru D20 Pathfinder SRD pays a better percentage, so I would like to drive more traffic there, but I don't find that customers go there as readily for my stuff. And even myself, I don't find the shopping experience as comfortable.
I don't either.
On the D20 Pathfinder SRD, and I think that's part of the limiting thing. What I do see on that site, though, is the people that seem to be the most successful have all of their content up for free on the site. And it seems like if you have as much content as you can up for free, people will then buy your content, which is so counterproductive. Or counterintuitive, but it seems to work. Like everything that Dreamscar sells, Dreamscar Press sells, and they're selling a lot at the D20 Pathfinder SRD, is all up on the site normally.
Yep. I think what happens there, I think it's twofold. First of all, if you have content up for free, John Rice, who runs it, most likely will put a link to your product right there in the rules section.
Yeah.
So if someone's going through the rules section and they're like, ooh, I really like these rules. Ooh, I really like these rules. I don't want to have to constantly be looking at this website. What if my internet connection goes out? And if it's not expensive, they'll just buy the PDF. It's right there. I think the other thing is that DreamsGuard in particular has been pushing people there and has content in Open Gamer Monthly.
Yeah.
And that's a magazine that points back to D20PFSRD.com. I ran a sale. I've got a product, Spell Points, House Rules Help Handbooks, Spell Points for Pathfinder. And I had sold a grand total over 6 months of 3 copies at $8 each at the D20PFSRD.com store. Because I'm in contact with John Rice through Facebook, I saw him saying, I want someone to run a great big deep discount sale. I'll work with you, I'll advertise it. I want someone to sell something much cheaper than normal for a really short period of time and see if they make more money. So I saw that on Facebook. This is a case where I was not trying to track him, I'm just going through my feed. And I see this as an opportunity, so I contact him again on Facebook and I say, you know, what are you looking at? What are you wanting to do? What's the model you want to emulate? Wright Publishing had a very successful sale on One Bookshelf and had talked about it on Facebook. And that is one of the ways that we small publishers get information, is that one of us, in order to drive people to be interested in reading our material, will talk about our experiences. The rest of us are reading that to try and learn, and it's as close to a water cooler as we have. You know, he's not in the same country I am. Wright Publishing is close to me now because we moved to another state. My business partners, when I'm in Oklahoma, are in Seattle. This is the only place normally where we tend to gather, some on G+, some on Twitter, but Facebook seems to be, for the publishers, the stronger set. So because I saw that there were these opportunities and people talking and saying how well it went, we went ahead and had a sale. We sold a $8 PDF for $1 for 1 week. We said it was just going to be a week. We said we didn't advertise in advance, it was just a quick short sale, and we sold 76 copies at $1 each. So I had previously sold a grand total of 3 copies for a grand total of $21 over 6 months. Clearly, if I was going to have a spike in sales, it would have happened by then. I made $68 after my cut on this $1 sale. Now, that is not a huge part of my monthly income, but anything that will buy me a pizza is enough money for me to pay attention to, right? If it's $20 or more, that's something I know. How did that work? Where did that money come from? Can I duplicate that? Can I maximize off of it? Because I do this full time, you know, I put my wife through college writing game material. I pay my mortgage with this material. The health insurance comes out of this. This income is crucial to my existence. I do not have another income source. This is all I do. So if there's a place where I see I made $110 at D20PFSRD.com 2 months ago, and I make $178 this month, that may not be the 3 or 4 grand that is happening somewhere else, but it has definitely got my attention. Especially since our sales at Paizo, which have always been higher, about 18 months ago, kind of capped. We still have pretty consistent sales there, but those numbers stopped growing. And so we turned to drive-through, and we brought them up to being pretty close to that, and then they have kind of capped. I think there may be sort of a maximum penetration where there are only so many people that are willing to buy new stuff from us at these. So now D20PFSRD.com is potentially a new venue where I can hope there's a whole market of people that are buying from our stuff. And Facebook and Twitter and G+ is where I'm asking other publishers these questions. How are your sales? Where are things going? And some people, even if you're friends, right, this is confidential business information. Some people just don't tell you anything. Other people say, I used to make $4 here for everyone I made here, now it's 2 to 1. That's useful information, even if I don't know if it's 400 to 200, 40,000 to 20,000, whatever it is, I still know that the ratio is changing, so there's growth in these other markets.
Excellent.
And then there is a lot of talk between publishers, fairly open talk between publishers on Facebook, on Google+, on Twitter.
A lot of us know each other, right? I mean, Steve has, after I met Steve at Gen Con, we talked on Facebook for a while, and we started doing Debbie Played of Gaming, which is a podcast we do. When he drove through the state, he stayed at my house and played in my wife's Pathfinder game. So, you know, I know him. I've worked for John Goodman. I've worked for Lewis Porter Jr. I've worked for Paizo, and therefore I work with Jason Bowman. I've worked for Sean K. Reynolds. So These are people I know, and so this is a great way to be in touch with people who live hundreds or thousands of miles away from you. And it's less intrusive than email. If I send someone an email, they have to look at it, decide if they're going to open it, decide whether or not they're going to talk about it. If I'm just firing off Facebook posts, then people will see them or not, respond or not. It's less effort on my part to target them. It'll be seen by the people who want to see it. It's less effort on their part to see it. Either it shows up or it doesn't. And that makes it a very hit or miss system. But the network is strong enough that I think it has a solid value, both for networking and advertising. Most of our advertising occurs by having fans follow us on Facebook and G+ and Twitter. And so we will do some free stuff. I do a spell almost every day on Twitter. I cram a spell into 140 characters. That's not easy. We do free feats on Facebook. We talk about advertising stuff on G+. So people are already following us. And of course, we're linking the cute cats and the awesome video about Sarah Sword Fighter, who was the #1 sword fighting champion. And you know, we're geeks. We click to that too. People follow us, and then when we say, "Hey, we have a new product," they're seeing that, and we can link directly to drive-through or whatever. Although apparently RPG Now is actually going away in the next couple of years. It'll just be drive-through.
Okay.
They're going to close the RPG store. We used to push everything at drive-through instead of at RPG Now instead of drive-through, and we're switching because we want to train people to go to the one that's going to be there.
Excellent.
And since the topic of Facebook got brought up and just like how you're able to maximize your distance, I mean, Owen here lives in Oklahoma. Most of Paizo and most of Wizards of the Coast, which are the most major publishers in the industry, are based mainly in the Washington and Seattle area. Most game developers do live in that specific area. Not only are you able to get game developers from all across the place, and even Canada with Mark here, say artists as well. And my little outfit, Igre Publishing, I have a team of 3 freelancers, 2 of which come from France, 1 in Naples, France, and I mean this is a good distance of probably 250,000 miles. And then also even the Philippines. So using Facebook and using other sites such as DeviantArt, where you're able to go and just profile and browse for potential artists for any type of product you're working on, or even using Facebook and Google+, where you'll see advertisements from, say, Silver Griffin Games is looking for freelancers, or Goodman Games is putting out a contest for writers to send in and potentially get a product published. You're able to find more contacts, you're able to find more deals, more people looking for work, and potentially maximize your staff just utilizing those.
My favorite cover artist of ours is a artist in China who we have to speak to through a Google translator because she doesn't speak English and we don't speak Chinese, that we buy second use rights for her stuff, right? She's done it for some other purpose, but the rights are still hers, so we can get it just for RPGs. Without a series of social media options, we would not have contacted her, we wouldn't have known she existed, we wouldn't be able to communicate with her. So.
Exactly.
With ourselves at Purple Duck Games, beyond my editor who teaches English 2 doors down from me, absolutely everyone that I work with is people that I've never met in person. They're all people that I've talked to through Google Plus or Facebook or email. And even Robert, when I took over for Wins Fantasy Gaming, I never met Robert until yesterday.
Yeah.
So, not in person,
right?
But we've had lots of good conversations about a variety of things over the years. So most of that interaction is at distance, and it's been really an essential tool. All of those. I find Facebook is really good for talking about Pathfinder stuff. I find Google Plus is way better about talking about Pro Classic stuff.
And that is one of the things you have to learn. That's a really important note that this group in particular should talk about. Different social media can be stronger for different games and their communities. Numenera, I think, is split pretty evenly between G+ and Facebook, but it's got a strong G+ contingent. I have been largely ignoring G+, and at the last Gen Con, a bunch of people said, "Oh, I didn't even know you were online. I don't ever see you on G+." So I'm like, "Well, I'm never on G+. Okay, now I've got to be on G+." The Pathfinder people, I've actually found more and more trickling in through G+ that apparently just aren't on Facebook. A lot of people hate Facebook. I mean, actively despise it, wish that this building would burn to the ground. So if you are just talking on Facebook, those people aren't hearing you. A lot of people are on both, so if you post exactly the same thing to both, they get bored with you. So you've got to be very careful on forging where do I want to send the message, what do I want the message to be, who do I want to reach. Until this meeting, I didn't know that DCC people were more active on G+. It doesn't surprise me.
No, actually I find G Plus is really good for anything that's OCR, old school revolution stuff.
Yes.
So anything we do for Labyrinth Lords, or if we do anything for Swords and Wizardry, or anything for DCC, that is all G Plus posts because we get the most reflection. And I have, like, for Pathfinder stuff, essentially we get Megan reviewing and we get Enzeitgeist reviewing. But I've got 3 or 4 reviewers who will review anything we put out for DCC. And random customers will review for DCC, and we don't get random customers reviewing for our Pathfinder. So Dungeon Crawl Classics has been a huge benefit to add to our portfolio, and I think that part of that is coming right from Joseph Goodman, because in order to publish a DCC product, it has to be approved by Joseph Goodman. So everything that comes out
has a stamp of approval.
Has a stamp of approval, and there's no such stamp of approval in Pathfinder.
Sure isn't.
And so
Nothing even close.
yeah.
But the closest you have is if you work for Paizo.
Yeah.
Right, I think Sean Reynolds and Jason Bullman probably come as close to having as freelance, as third-party publishers, the Paizo stamp of approval for Pathfinder. Do we want to open this up to questions at all in case people have?
Yes, definitely. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
Because I will just keep talking until these two stop.
How, as being someone who's been in the RPG industry for some time, you were into it for the internet.
Yep.
How have you found that the interaction of fans being able to directly address you has changed how you do business?
It has caused me to grow a much thicker skin. A lot of it's a great question, by the way, a lot of designers carefully separate their public designer account and their private account just for friends. So they can rant and rave and talk about how they hate whatever political situation they dislike or what movie betrayed their childhood privately, and then only talk game design publicly. I don't do that, and the reason I don't do that is I will at 3 o'clock in the morning post the wrong thing on the wrong list. I know it now. I will get on what is supposed to be my game designer Facebook page. I cannot believe that Clark Kent is responsible for the loss of billions of lives. And people who love that movie are going to be like, ooh, I hate you, I'm never buying your product again. So I've had to become very diplomatic, and I stand by what I say, and I'm willing to say controversial things if I'm willing to stand by them. I don't lie, I try not to dissemble, but I am aware that everything I say online is being read by people who are my customers and patrons. And the best sales come when I have built a community with people. I've got some people who just particularly love like the talented class line or just particularly love our time stuff. And they'll talk to me, it is not unusual for me to be working and I'll get a little bling, got a minute? If I've got a minute, I'll say, yeah, I have a minute, sure, what's up? And they may ask me a rules question and I'll answer it. And then they go to their social media and said, Owen Stevens just answered this question for me about this product, and they link. So that minute of politeness has then got them boosting my product and talking about how great a guy I am as much as possible. And then that spreads. And gamers like to like the people they're giving money to. Much more than people who buy beer, right? If you're going to buy a beer, you mostly don't care whether you personally enjoy hanging out with the brewer. You probably don't know his name. But we're a much smaller industry, and social media has made that even smaller. And random fans can talk to me about whatever they want, and I've got to make time available for that. And I also have to make sure it doesn't eat up my time doing everything else. I have occasionally actually posted a complaint, done a whole bunch of writing today. I wish any of it had been for a product, right? Because you've got 10 emails, and you're writing back about contracts, and then 14 people want to talk to you online. You have to manage those expectations. But I have found it has helped me pull out, I'm an introvert, and it does help me pull out of my shell some, and it lets me interact with people when I don't feel like interacting with people. And if it's a real problem, I turn off Facebook, because if I'm not there, they see not online. But you got to be careful. Mark, you were certainly gaming before all this came about, and actually with there wasn't the kind of social media there is now when you were doing stuff for Mongoose. So how's it changed it for you?
Well, I actually have separate accounts. And I have separate accounts for the sole reason that Mark Geddick is a high school teacher, and Purple Duck Mark is a publisher. So I'm Purple Duck Mark on Facebook.
Yep.
And I am Purple Duck Games on Google+. And then I have my Mark Geddick account too, because as a teacher, I have a public persona that is incredibly important to maintain. And if not everyone understands that there can be a separation between the two separate jobs. So I do actually maintain separate personas online for purposing, but a lot of my posts I will sign Mark Geddick. So if anyone really was looking to see what I did on the internet, they'd still bump into Purple Duck Games anyway. I do talk to a lot of people on Google+. I have a lot more conversations on Google+, and people message me on Google Talk regularly whenever I'm online. When I'm online and it's open, then I can, but that's usually going to be at nights, because during the day I'm teaching class. So I don't have that opportunity, and I know sometimes that has annoyed people that they haven't been able to get a hold of me during the day, but it's not my day job. So I just can't.
That is a place where I have a significant advantage, because I can sit there with Facebook open, G+ open, Twitter open, although I'm less likely to, and I'm sitting there working 12 hours a day. I'm sitting in front of my computer writing, and if someone wants to talk to me and I'm ready for a break, I can just slip that in. Being a full-time writer makes writing much easier. Making enough money writing so that you can do it full-time is difficult. So it is a give and take. And there have been moments which I'm trying to figure out how we're going to pay the electric bill in a bad month, where sales are down or a game company hasn't paid me, that I wonder maybe I'd be better off if I opened a retail store. But just, a job, someone...
We'll dialogue later on that.
Okay, all right, good. But, I have had a regular job where it's a good month, it's a bad month. I worked for the student union at the University of Oklahoma for a while. No matter what was going on at OU, I got paid. My insurance was covered, my check showed up. If I went to work and I felt terrible, I made exactly the same amount of money. If I'm having an off month personally as a writer, and I talk about this some online, and this is one of the places where you can get tricky. I'm an introvert, I can be depressive, I have issues. I've got to be very careful about discussing those issues online, because I don't want to seem to be whining or trying to draw in sympathy. But on the other hand, there are people that want to know what being a writer is like, and I want them to have a feel for that. Am I talking over time?
No. And this is coming from a self-pub perspective, so this is 0.001 cents. But I do keep two separate Facebook accounts, one for my personal profile and then one for Higray Publishing's products such as Swordland. The main reason I do that is people don't really care for my personal life, so I keep that separate. The wonderful, wonderful thing about having a Facebook account for whatever products I'm working on is the fact that if I get somebody that's a fan of it, they don't necessarily go to my private page, or they might not necessarily be able to find me since, say, somebody lives in Missoula once I had gone over and run games at MISCON for them. But they want to get in contact with me about some product I had run down there. They go to the product site and say, oh, this was a fun game, I really enjoyed this. Then I know I got one person that's really interested in it, and then you multiply that by how many other people keep coming in and saying, this is a fun game to play. Now I know these people are there, I know who are fans. As an individual writer, I'm able to go out and then interact with those people, which if this was, say, 70s TSR Lake Geneva, this would not be possible. You'd be receiving snail mail at a very reduced pace. I could go and talk to somebody that liked a post within 2 seconds and say, okay, tell me what you liked about this, tell me what you didn't like. It's such an invaluable tool for building a product.
It's also great if you're going to be someplace, right? I was talking on Facebook for 10 months now that I will be at the Great Falls Gaming Rendezvous for this weekend. A whole bunch of people 10 months ago said, ooh, I'm going to come see you. And then fewer at 8 months, and fewer at 6, and fewer at 4, because then the commitment becomes real. But a bunch of people know they're not going to be able to get a hold of me this weekend. I've known for a long time. Fans did hunt me down and have me sign stuff at Gen Con. They've been talking about, I'm going to be at Gen Con. What they're doing is the norm. Having a personal account and a publisher account is the norm, and I recommend it even though I don't do it. Although, to be clear, There are Super Genius Games account that are corporate accounts that I and Stan and Hiram all have access to that we do public announcements and stuff on, and that exists so that if someone doesn't know me personally and they're on Facebook and they like our products and they go, ooh, I like Super Genius Games, I wonder if they have a page, they can type that in and yes, sure we do. And I post on it fairly often, and then people frequently leak from there to me or vice versa. But I recommend, as long as you're not someone like me who will get it wrong, go with two accounts. It's a smarter decision. It's just not one that I will actually maintain properly. And that keeps me honest. That also keeps me from ranting at my friends too much, right? Because whatever I'm going to say, everyone sees. I have a file called deleted posts where I have hate, spile, venom. I can't possibly post that. Cut, paste, save. It's there, but no one's seeing it. And it helps because I distrust all of the social media, so if the post is going to be more than 2 sentences, I tend to write it in Word, edit it, save it, copy it, and then post it so that the glitch doesn't cause me to lose 500 brilliant words about mythic adventures or whatever.
And since we're on the topic as well, and since we're...
Yeah, question.
Follow-up question.
Okay, follow-up.
And actually, this is for Eric, for Mark. Since you guys have your separate accounts, you have Purple Duck Mark, right?
Yeah.
Is that a personal page or a business page?
That is a personal page. Robert has a business page for Four Winds Fantasy Gaming. I never did that for Purple Duck Games, and it's simply because I was never a Facebook person.
Okay.
I was only marginally on Facebook because I was never really into social media a great deal originally. I really got into Google Plus a lot, and I was using Purple Duck Mark a little bit here and there. And then when I acquired Four Winds Fantasy Gaming, they already had a business page, and I really should have gotten around to building a Purple Duck business page, but I just haven't ever done it yet, and I know I should.
The reason I ask is because I had my store, I did my store as a personal page, and Facebook recently just came down and put the ban hammer on me and forcibly converted my page over to a like page, and I despise it with every fiber of my being now. So I was just curious if you had a personal or...
Yeah, mine is a personal page.
One of the things I will say, I do run a business page, and it's just for Swordland RPG. One of the main problems is if I'm mobile at an event and I'm not have access to a computer, being able to access that page in order to see new notifications. So if somebody, say our website guy, gets a hold of me, he's like, oh, I need you to confirm this, and he sends me a message on that page. If he didn't send it to my personal account, I literally have no way of checking it on my mobile phone unless I download a separate app that allows me to go and look at that, and then download a separate app to look at that message, which gets rather retentive.
Yes.
Yes.
But at the same time, though, it is really nice to have that, so any personal rant or opinion I have is completely separate from my personal, or from my products page, so therefore people don't see my personal opinion, so therefore it doesn't influence whatever product I'm working on. Now this is a question that I've always been kind of wondering myself, and I'm just dipping right into it head first, and this is a concept.
You're the moderator, man, so.
A public playtest. Paizo did it with Pathfinder as they were starting up, and of course Wizards of the Coast is doing the Dungeons & Dragons next playtest. What are your opinions on this particular way about going and getting public interest in the game product?
Well, as a small publisher, I don't know that if I ran a public playtest for anything in particular, I would get anyone. Wizards of the Coast and Paizo are very successful at getting people to look at it because they already have people looking at their page constantly. As a smaller publisher, I don't know how accessible it is to get people. I can't find people to review my products beyond N-Zeitgeist. And N-Zeitgeist seemingly likes our products, but I don't get any other reviews from people. So I don't know if I put out a product for just playtest, if I would get anything back. I have sent out modules to playtest people, and people said, yes, we'll playtest them, we'll run it this weekend, and you never hear back from them. So I don't know that it honestly works at my size, and I'm just assuming it works at a larger size.
I'm not sure it's entirely about size. Both DreamsGuard and Paizo were doing something a little odd. They were taking an existing popular game that their market already had mostly bought and trying to push a revised edition that you were going to lay out a new $50 for. In order to get buy-in, I think it was very savvy of them to talk it up, get people excited, get people talking about it before it existed, and then going, you know what, we're going to give you an open play test. And then people can get in there, you can get that feedback, they were able to talk to people in the forums, and then they put it out. What you never want to do is try to build hype and then publicly go, and here's the play test, and then you get cyber crickets. Because then you have, as a marketing push, created an appearance of disinterest. I have playtest groups where we do private playtests. I've got 2 that are actually in my hometown, and then I've got between 2 and 3 at any given moment, depending on whether or not I give them the module and I never hear back. I've got 2 that have been very solid for 2.5, 3 years, and then sometimes I've got a third, sometimes I don't. Sometimes they'll be great for a little while, and then they drop off the face of the earth, or as I call it, going turtle. They pull their head and their legs in, and there's a shell, and you can't hear from them at all. I think playtesting is extremely useful. For our print books, I generally think of the PDF as the public playtest. The playtesters bought in the privilege to playtest. Because if nothing finds errors like putting something in print. So when I put out a PDF out there, I assume that no matter how many people I've had look over it, and I've sometimes done 5 editing passes at the end of a product. And then 48 hours after it goes out, we will have sold sort of 75 of them, and some really dedicated fan will show up on Paizo and say, so here are the 15 typos I found, and here are the 3 things where I think this rule you've created will combine with this other thing over here to allow Kobold to rule the earth. And, you know, the nice thing about PDFs is you can then either talk to that person and say, here's what you're missing on why the Kobold would explode first. Or you can go, great, Zot, you're right, let us fix that, and then you change it. And then after a period of time, you can gather those things and put them in print, and they've already been more vetted. I do my best to have them as good enough that I would print them when I put them out as a PDF, but I certainly want to give them the opportunity to have another run at it. It is conceivable that when we are further along on Warlords of the Apocalypse, which we bought from Adamant because they weren't getting anywhere with it, and we told people, we're taking it, we will get you your books, but we're not telling you when because we don't know how badly this is going to have to be rewritten yet, and we're still not telling people that yet. We've had it for about a year now. When we are further along on that, we might do a public playtest because, again, I will be asking people to invest in a pretty big book. And I think there might well be some benefit of doing that because I think people will buy it in print even if they've had an open playtest. But I think I think Mark's right. I think there are scales of things. It's not all about size. Sometimes it's about how rabid your community is. If I do anything involving our shadow line, our timeline, or our godly line, our line of time products, or our godly line, there are a good half-dozen fans who are rabidly waiting for any new release, and I can write to them and I can say, hey, can you run a playtest for me? And they're like, yes, absolutely. And when we were smaller, I could do that. There are new things that we release sometimes, and I'm like, hey, I'm looking for a few more opinions on this, and crickets, 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 crickets. So it might be that I'm more into the Paizo community. I don't see you post much on the Paizo forums.
No, I don't, and I should post more.
In my experience, the more you are active on the Paizo forums, the more books you will sell at the Paizo store. That's the way it seems to work. That takes time, and that is a place where the fact that I do this full time does give me an edge. The heck was the original question? Oh, open playtests.
Yeah.
So you'd want to try to make sure before you release an open playtest that you had enough people excited that when you put it out, whatever, either have your feedback mechanism be secret, right? You can say, here's the open playtest, send your comments to this email, and then no one expects to see a huge thread under it, and if 2 people write to you, you can say, all of the feedback was great, which all of it too. Or make positive that you are going to have some people talking about it before you put it out there, because perception becomes reality really fast in a lot of gamers' opinions.
With our products, we do a lot of our Pathfinder stuff whenever we're doing new system stuff or adventures. We do internal playtesting with our group. We just derail our campaign, our pathway at that time, and we focus on that. With our DCC stuff, there are rabid DCC fans who take it play test and blog about their play test, and then when it comes out, we have an instant fan base for that stuff, so that's been very good.
Do you think you're perceived as larger in the DCC community, or do you think the community is just more interested in what you're doing because you're connected to them?
Honestly, I think that the DCC community, the big thing is there's only about 6 third-party publishers supporting it, and we have the most, I think we have the most product out. So we are the big fish in the third-party.
So you are perceived as bigger to that group of people.
Absolutely.
So some of it is, I think Mark and I are in basically the same place. Not everyone's going to get away with it, and some of it is how big you are, and some of it is how strongly you're tied into the community and what the perception is.
Yes, and part of that too is like our main writer DCC is very active in the community, and he's very active on the forums. I would love to be more active on the Paizo forums, but if I was active on the Paizo forums, I wouldn't be editing, I wouldn't be doing layout, I wouldn't be doing my orders, I wouldn't be getting anything published. And simply because of my time, I can't be active there. So I'm active on Google Plus because it's quick, and I'm active on Facebook when I can. And I can't be as socially active on forums as I need to be more successful.
And there are more forums out there, right? There are forums for D20PFSRD.com. They're hard to find, and there aren't a lot of people on them, and I'm one of the people that's not on them. There are forums at RPG.net, which some people drive a lot of sales through RPG.net. I'm not a fan of RPG.net. I've got an account, I almost never post there. There are forums at EN World where I used to be really active, and then it felt unfriendly to me for a while because it seemed like 4th edition fans would hunt me down and yell at me when I posted anything on EN World. That has changed some, and I should go back there, but you do run into the time issue, right? I have dedicated to this set of forums. I've got more time to do this than he does. There are other forums I'd love to be more active in, but there's no point in talking up something you never have time to write.
On the Google Plus forums, there's a Pathfinder group that's managed by George Williams Loki.
Okay.
And he is closely associated with the D20 Pathfinder SRD. So if you want to reach Pathfinder SRD fans, that is an excellent place to be posted.
And this is coming from
Did they take
a
a picture?
I think they did.
Just left? Wow. You're famous.
I don't understand that at all. Like, I know that you were talking about me being a contemporary in the, like when you were listing off the Paizo.
Yeah, part of the honorable competition, yeah.
The honorable competition, and I don't understand that mentally. And I know how much product I have out.
Do you know how often when people are talking about cover art and how important cover art is on the Paizo forums, inevitably someone says, unless you're brilliant like Purple Duck Games.
Or Raging Swan.
Or Raging Swan, yeah, those are the two that come up because they've managed to come up with a process.
And honestly, I stole his. I really stole it, Raging Swans, because he has a flat black cover with the name of the product in white, and there's nothing else on it except for his swan at the bottom. Mine is the Purple Duck Purple with one piece of color art that I steal from the interior of the book, and that is it every time. I don't deviate from that, and it's worked consistently for me, and I haven't had to buy cover art, which is good because it's really expensive. Or it can be.
It can be.
Yeah.
There are ways around that.
Yeah.
But most of our cover art is stock art. A smaller percentage of it is second use art that we've picked up from somewhere. And there's this tiny little sliver of new art we've commissioned, mostly from Jacob Blackman because he's a friend of mine. Right? That's because if I absolutely positively have to have something and nothing else will work. But we have dedicated to having a different piece of art on the cover. So if we did what he did and have a window of an interior piece, people would be like, oh, Super Genius is running out of money. But he started that way, so this artist is much smarter than us because he's got a cheaper way to look good, and your products look good.
Yeah, and you use a lot of stock art in the interior, whereas I actually buy quite a bit of art for my interiors because I have a number of artists that I work well with, I also put a lot of the art that we use in our interior out of stock art from those artists as well. So Purple Duck art eventually appears in many other products as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of Purple Duck art in Super Genius Games.
Yep.
The other reason we use a lot of stock art is that the product a week schedule, which we've maintained for 4 years, means that it is very difficult to know. We've done a new product a week, every week, for 4 years. Without fail, we have not slipped once. This week's product went out yesterday, by the way, so it's gotten close to time or two. That means that if I'm going to have new art, I have to know what the new art is, talk to the artist, get it in, do revisions, and do layout. I don't have to do it in a week, right? We always have products. I've got next week's is in layout, the week after that is in editing, etc. But it's a quick turnaround, and we do not have a lot of wiggle room. So stock art is great for us because we can go, do we have a sword? Any sword? Yeah, sure. And sometimes I do, now we're off social media, sometimes I do this backwards. If we have a sword that's almost perfect because I said that our sword was long and this one's short, there, now it is perfect custom art.
And this is coming from a self-pub too, going back to the concept of a public playtest. It's such a utilitarian product buy-in, essentially, and it really depends how you time it and how much fan base, admittedly, as you said, got in. I don't know if people know me on the campaign trail at conventions, but I aggressively promote wherever I'm going, and I've built up a pretty steady fan base in Montana. That being said, Montana is not the entire world. There's lots of gamers elsewhere out there that you can't really hit.
Feels like when you're driving through it, though.
Oh, yeah. But you're able to hit those people using Facebook and all those other means. The concept of putting out a public playtest does seem like you're giving out a free product, essentially. You're giving out portions of the rules. But I view it more as, it's more of a teaser. This is something that I want you to look at. I want you to judge, is this something you want to play? Is this something you're going to enjoy? They send feedback back and they say, oh, this was good, but part X where the ranger managed to pull up 4, 6, 12 attacks at one point was probably broken, you should fix that. It's like, oh goodness, yeah, I probably should. Which was pointed out previously. Or maybe something's wrong with the wizard and it's casting 70 points of damage per spell.
Have they?
Well, they seem to. They're following your model of 1 a week at least.
But
Yeah, and eventually.
just having that
Fire.
feedback
That's
available and being able to go back to the original document, see, this was what the most complaints about particular product X was.
4.
This is where the most compliments were on X. I should repeat X
I don't.
and
Gotcha.
avoid Y. And that feedback is so useful
Yes.
that it just basically shapes how whatever work I'm working on currently is progressing. As far as time goes, I'd say we probably got maybe 1 or 2 minutes more for a particular question. If anybody has a question, Mr. Darren.
It's a good thing you're here.
Yes.
So this is just a can of worms I want to hear about paid betas.
I don't have a problem with them at all. I am economically very laissez-faire. If everyone knows what everything is agreed to and what they are and aren't getting, and that's what people want to spend their money on, and people are willing to be seen asking for that money, God bless them. I don't have an issue one way or the other. I don't know that WotC gets away with stuff no one else does.
Well, Fantasy Flight now has both the Star Wars lines.
Yep.
That just went into paid betas.
And they are now big enough to get away with stuff. But of course, they also do a lot of stuff that is free as long as you buy enough of their product. They both have big support. I don't think you would ever see Super Genius doing a paid beta unless it was a reward level on a Kickstarter, which comes really close to being a paid beta, and it's a slightly different situation. But you know, when we did our DungeonToday.com website Kickstarter, I charged people extra money to write in the corpse of their favorite character in the dungeon. Right? People paid me so that in the dungeon, a character that they picked, dead body, is found in there now as an official part of the dungeon. There were people willing to shell out an extra $50 for that. Okay, see? God bless it. Give me $50 and it'll be done by Thursday. I'm easy. So I don't have a problem with it. I think you've got to be very, very careful to not look greedy unless you're so big that you're going to look greedy no matter what, in which case, what difference does it make? There's nothing that Fantasy Flight and Wizards, or for that matter, the Warhammer folks, Games Workshop, there's nothing that they can do that someone isn't going to decide that they're greedy and evil because they are businesses first and fans second. Now I'm wondering if I do want to do that for Kickstarter. Do you have a thought on paid betas?
No, because realistically, as a PDF publisher, a lot of the PDF stuff is sort of beta-ish until we get that feedback.
Yeah.
So a lot of the PDF, like sometimes we will release something and it gets torn apart with something we totally missed, and then we need to go back. So at that point, it was a beta, and we just didn't realize it was a beta at the time.
And it's a beta because people bought the PDF.
Yeah, and people already chipped in, so we want to make sure it's right.
And what you do, right, when you're caught in that situation is you just say, nothing's perfect, there are more of you than there are of us, you found something, we fixed it, you get the update free, enjoy. And that's why I like doing our print books as compilations of our PDFs that have been out for a while.
Yeah, and then that's, I think, with a number of ours too, like some of our other lines, like the Legendary Weapons line, that will go to a print compilation eventually now. We've had 8 of them, and they've been very well
Relics of the
reviewed.
Godwings is almost exactly the same
Yeah.
idea, and we've had 2, and at some point we probably will get a print on them.
Yeah, and with our Legendary Weapons now, Dreamscar picked it up as their mechanic for scalable magic items. Since Mark Rattles at Wolfgang Bar, they've picked it up as their scalable magic items. So now our scalable magic item rules are being used by 3 other third-party publishers.
But not us, except for mine.
Yeah. And same with Steve. Even though I talked to Steve Russell and Ray Publishing, he's got his own too. And so.
Yeah, and he's not using ours either, right? He knew they were both.
What was yours? Was yours originally out of Game Mechanics?
No.
No, you weren't on that one.
No,
Yeah,
Relics of the Godwings, it's originally from an idea I did in D20 Weekly and retained the OGO rights for, but it was significantly modified. The main thing is that you get something at every single level.
Yeah.
And then I've got multiple ways to pay for that, depending on what the GM wants to do. And then I've got templates at the back that show you how to make your own.
Okay.
Obviously, I think it's better. I wrote it, right? But that's if you don't like your game mechanics better than the game mechanics that other people are doing, don't write that game mechanic. That's
Has
just
there ever been a situation where you've written a game mechanic and you've been happy with it, then you read someone else's book and go, oh, they did this so much better than I did?
yes, many times. And either I revise mine or I just stop pushing it and adopt theirs.
Okay.
Yeah, that absolutely happens. That always happens.
One of the things that's hard, like Owen made a list of the what he sees as the main third-party publishers, but the problem is with the main he's got 10 or so on the main third-party publishers list here. But if you go to the Pezos third-party publishers, there's like 140 publishers.
Yep.
And like I know myself, I don't keep up with what Owen puts out. I can't keep on top.
Product a week, you can't keep up with that?
I don't. I did for a time early on, and I'm not keeping up with
I wonder if that's where our sales slumped at one point, because other publishers went, no, can't do it.
Yeah, but I did come back because, specifically, and Zeitgeist, when he commented on one of our products, he said, but I like what Owen's doing better here.
I've been burned with that before.
And I came over that
Do
way.
you remember what it was?
He pointed me to the Talented one.
I see. Do you like the Talented books?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
But they're a little open. And I think players could really screw up their characters with it.
With the Talented Fighter, it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
With the talented Monk, there's a warning sign.
Yep, there is a
There's
warning sign.
that says it is possible to make a terrible character with these rules. Make sure you do one of these things.
Yeah. And that's helpful.
I don't think necessarily a terrible character is bad in some instances. In fact, I think I have more fun with characters that have inherent flaws in them, running a campaign though.
But if you bought a book so that you could make an awesome Kung Fu master, and you thought you'd made an awesome Kung Fu master, and you expected to be good at this, and got your butt handed to you, there's a good chance you'd decide that this system sucks, even if you have fun with the character. And my job as a publisher is for you to think this system is awesome, I should buy more of their stuff. So sadly, your having fun is actually secondary. I've got a bunch of people that buy ours. It is, it has to be, right? Because I need to make a living at this. I've got people who've written, I've bought everything that Super Genius Games has ever used, and I love reading it, but we can't put any of it into our campaigns because our GM won't let us. I'd love for them to have fun with my stuff, but if they're buying it, whatever their reason to buy it is, that has to be valid to
That's all
me.
your audience.
Yeah.
And there's lots of ways to make ineffective characters. And the problem, my table is very kitchen sink.
Okay.
We play with any supplement my players want to bring in. I could care less. I would seem really bad of me as a third-party publisher to tell my people they could only use the core rules. That just feels wrong to me. So our games will have all sorts of chaos, and sometimes we will build really ineffective characters. I made a really ineffective witch. For Carrion Crown, and had that character die horribly because I didn't have anything to survive. And I find that when I play Pathfinder Adventure Path from Paizo, if I don't have a good, well-designed character, they're not living very long. If I play Purple Mountain or one of our games, it's fine. We can bring in God knows what.
That's
We'll
the style
still
thing,
fine.
yeah.
But the way that those adventure paths are built, with their power curve that is implied and built into it,
Yep.
unless you're doing it right, you usually don't live that long.
And they carefully try to build those so that average characters can get through. But of course, that means that there's another group of people who are very careful min-maxers that have every little bonus tweaked to 11, who are like, adventure paths are useless, everything's too easy. So this is the market we're trying to make people happy in. I am told by our moderator we're out of time. I think we're actually technically 10 minutes over time, but
Minute overtime,
Okay.
so, but that is fine, so.
Thank you all, folks. This was a lovely panel. I
It was fantastic.
appreciate all the questions. Thank you.